So Ron, lots of buzz this week about wearable technology, lots of buzz for ages about it, but I'm seeing a lot of products that I consider to be regular products, headphones, those kind of things. What is wearable tech? How do you define a wearable product?
Yeah, I'd like to know. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to figure that out. About the only thing I've really seen, a wristband here or there. Now they do lots of different things, and I've seen a couple of different versions of Glass coming out after Google Glass. But I haven't seen a whole lot in variety in terms of other wearable technology. So I think the functionality is interesting, but I think it's still in its infancy, and there's a lot more to go there.
Yeah. And to me, if it's not apparel, if it's not connected to some kind of apparel, it's just electronics. And would that be true in terms of the way it's manufactured, the supply chain? You talk about Google Glasses, you talk about maybe headsets that measure your pulse and those kind of things. They're still manufactured in the traditional way. They're not using the apparel supply chain.
For sure, and I think that's going to be the case for a long time. And I think it'll be really interesting when they're really wearable devices, when they're really integrated with your clothing and what you wear on a day-to-day basis. Because it's going to have to morph the supply chain a little bit. Manufacturing apparel and manufacturing technology are very different. It's going to be interesting to see, are there apparel manufacturers that move horizontally to include technology, or will there be technology manufacturing suppliers that move horizontally to include the apparel? Or will it be a disintegrated supply chain where each party will do its own piece, and there'll be some third party that emerges as an integrator of the technology, with the garmentry, if you will. I did see over in Eureka Park, where there's a bunch of startups, I did see a startup company that was doing some computer sensors and some technology that would hook up to your phone that you can put into your own shoes. So rather than buying the shoes, it's almost like a little orthotic that you can put in there, but it has these sensors, it has some gyros and stuff in it, and it'll communicate with your smartphone. But I haven't seen anything really in a garment, per se.
Yeah, and that's interesting. To add to what you were saying, I think perhaps the other potential for the collision of those supply chains may well be some merger and acquisition business. May well be if a large EMS feels they need something in that space, they have to go out and acquire. Do you think generally there's some hunger amongst the EMSs to grow their businesses, to start acquiring again? Because we haven't seen much acquisition over the last few years in the EMS space.
Oh yeah, I think there's some hunger out there to do some acquisitions, and obviously it's company dependent, it's strategy dependent, it's geography dependent. But as the growth has slowed in general, I think specifically for the publicly traded companies, I think there's a lot of pressure to reinvigorate that growth. The only way you can get a real valuation on your stock price is some multiple or some combination of growth versus margin and earnings. And so if margin is 2.5%. What kind of multiple are you going to get on that? Well, it depends on your growth rate. But if your margins are 2.5% and your growth rate's kind of -2%, -3% a year, you're going to have a company that's not highly valued in the public markets.
Yeah. And just going back to wearables or not wearables, whatever we want to call them, seems to be a lot going on in what they call eye health or connected health, eye medicine, a lot in the fitness and wellness area. Those are quite connected areas of the market. Do you think that's a market that's going to bring a lot of new product out, a lot of opportunity, particularly for the EMS, for the outsourcing industry?
I think it will. I don't know what the dollar value of it will be, but I think everybody's got two wrists and everybody's got two hands, and so the total available market on paper could be quite large. I think it has to do with what is the real user experience, what is the real capability you're adding. I think a lot of the early adopters have been consistent with early adopters in any other space, which is, hey, that's unique, it's novel, I'm going to try it, I'm going to be one of the first ones to have it. But when you go to the mall, do you see everybody wearing a fuel band? Do you see everybody wearing a Fitbit? And today, not yet. But you see a lot of people wearing shirts, you see a lot of people wearing pants, and a lot of people wearing shoes, and I think that's really the opportunity. The question is, what functionality do I want? What functionality do I need? What functionality can I afford? And how does it get created? Who's going to come up with it?
Yeah, and the one place I did see a lot of people wearing Google Glasses was Media Day at CES. It's like a geek fest, and someone said to me, that's because geek became chic. I'm not aware that it did, but maybe that happened and it missed me. Last question, what's your highlight from the event? Perhaps in terms of product, in terms of trend, what's really stood out for you about CES 2014?
Well, I think the convergence of certain technologies. We talked a little bit about automotive, and my first car was like a '69 Mustang, and I think the electronics content in that was approximately zero. And all of the things that you can do with technology, if you put it into the average life of a person, whether it is wearable, whether it is the user experience of being in your car, whether it is having your car drive yourself to work. And technology and electronics, they've gotten so small, they've gotten so fast, there's so much productive capacity and design capability around it in the world, that the way we think about electronics over the next few years, I think, is going to be away from it as a device and more of it as a service or as something that naturally integrates to our life. It isn't something we carry, it's something that is part of what we do, right? So it's not this add-on, bolt-on, it's going to be more integrated into the functions of our life. And you're starting to see bits of that here. I think it's still quite early, but the potential is just fascinating.
Yeah. Well, Ron, enjoy the last couple of days of the event. Pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for stopping by to chat. Thank you.
Thank you much.